everyone. My name is Jack Cardis, and I'm the past director of the Miami-Dade Park and Recreation Department. It's good to see so many familiar faces there on the screen. I want to start by thanking Julie and Michael and every one of you for allowing me to make this presentation today. I want to also thank you all for the work you do as the guardians of the marine community. Your work as thought leaders has influenced the best and next practices for our mutual interests in the waterfront for many, many years. As you've heard from some of the folks that I've worked with over the years, I started out as a marina manager with Miami-Dade County, and at Crandon Marina, in fact, was my first stop, and then ran Holliver Park for about 10 years. But today I'm wearing a different hat. I am wearing my consultant hat, and after 36 years of working for Miami-Dade County, I've taken on a new career and trying to put some of that institutional knowledge to use here locally, while also doing work around the country for different projects. And today I want to start by first thanking the Fine Commissioner Spencer Crowley and Miami-Dade Parks Director Maria Nardi for their persistence and support in getting this waterfront master plan off the ground. Someday Spencer can tell you the long story of how hard we tried to work to get to this point in time many years ago. I'd also want to recognize Pros Consulting's Leon Younger and Austin Hochstetler, who I work with all over the country on different projects, and our sub-consultants, starting with your very own Ed Swaycon, they're from Portland, Oregon, Valerie Seidel from the Balmoral Group, and the team of Miami-Dade Parks, the planners, the grant specialists, and GIS professionals that are led by Stephanie Cornejo. And of course, Kathy Haley, who like me just can't get enough of this. You just stay around for forever and keep giving back as much as we can. I want to also recognize Jason. Thanks for being on the steering committee, and Don for your participation in the steering committee, and Monica and for your role in the resiliency office with us. I also recognize Casey Dres back there. So Spencer, my youngest daughter danced with her older sister Lindsay for years. I made sure I texted and clarified that with my wife as soon as I saw her name on the screen. So
that's so funny. Sorry to interrupt this meeting, but Nicole's dad?
Yes, I am.
Wow, what a small world.
Amazing. All those years of dance recitals.
Yes.
Yep. So anyway, today I'd like to start by giving a little context to where things started from the parks perspective. In 2008, the Miami-Dade County Board of Commissioners approved the Park and Open Space Master Plan, and then codified its principles in the CDMP in 2009. And the fundamentals of this plan are rooted in one simple phrase, and that's that every world-class community has a world-class park system. And park systems are just that. They're systems of parks, public spaces, natural and cultural areas that are all tied together by great trails, greenways, waterfronts, blueway trail systems, and complete streets that serve as linear parks. The Open Space Master Plan is the county's 50-year vision for connected public spaces, and it's governed by 6 principles. Those principles being that every resident should have and be able to enjoy the same quality of public facilities regardless of income, age, race, ability, or geographic location. Accessibility, where every resident should be able to safely and comfortably walk, bicycle, drive, or boat, or take public transit from their home to school, parks, shopping center, the waterfront, and community facilities. The concept of seamlessness, as you can imagine, with 34 municipalities, every element that the county, in the county, including neighborhoods, parks, natural areas, streets, and civic centers, and commercial areas, should be connected without regard to jurisdiction. Sustainability, that every action and improvement of the park system, including facilities and programs, should contribute to the economic, social, environmental prosperity of the county. And beauty, everything just needs to be drop dead gorgeous, from the streets to parks to plazas to civic buildings. They should all be designed to be aesthetically pleasing and complement the natural and cultural landscape. And then multiple benefits, that every single taxpayer's dollar gets spent on projects that have multiple benefits and not existing in silos. And to date, there's been more than 140 miles of bicycle trails and $400 million worth of park and marina enhancements, dozens of public-private partnerships that have been entered into that are bringing the park's open space master plan to fruition. Now, the one side and one piece that the open space master plan has lacked, and the thing that we've been trying to get off the ground for the longest time, has been the a blue ways plan, and primarily because there was a huge funding impact from the last recession that really ran from about 2008 to 2017, and it kind of prevented us from lining up the funding. And it was only recently that the Parks Department was able to actually come up with the match to be able to actually work with Florida Inland Navigation District to make it possible. As we all know, Biscayne Bay and the Intercoastal Waterway are the most identifiable and important economic, recreational, and environmental resources that make Miami one of the most desirable places to live, work, and play. Biscayne Bay is a remarkable water body surrounded by one of the world's most cosmopolitan and exciting cities. It also contains and is adjacent to natural areas not found anywhere else in the world. The fact that Biscayne Bay and its watershed are home to 2 national parks, which no other community that I'm aware of in the country is home to that. We have 3 state parks, a national marine sanctuary, a national state aquatic preserve, dozens of county and municipal waterfront parks and marinas, and a host of other national and state managed and protected areas. It's a testimony to the uniqueness of the area and the value of its natural resources. The Bay and the ICW connect 22 of the county's 34 municipalities, including unincorporated Miami-Dade, and represent access to thousands of water-related businesses, residential neighborhoods, recreational and ecotourism activities, commercial and industrial sites, and restaurants and entertainment destinations. Hundreds of miles of inland waterways, lakes, and canals connect the remaining municipalities and unincorporated areas to the Everglades, and eventually, as envisioned in the park's master plan, with the Lime Rock Mining Lake Belt as part of the county's Western Greenway. And while we are updating the numbers at this point in the study, the Marine Industries Association of South Florida in 2018 released a study on the boating business's economic impact for the region, showing that the industry's economic output has increased from $11.5 billion to $12 billion. South Florida marine sales of almost $3 billion represent more than 44% of the state's total marine sales, and sales were up in 2018, 125% in Miami-Dade County, 25% in Broward, and 20% in Palm Beach. The variety of economic activities tied to the uses of Biscayne Bay and the Miami River add to the economic diversity of the region and the state and are important to sustain a strong economy. As a previous study found, residents and visitors spend 65.5 million person days participating in a wide variety of recreation activities on Biscayne Bay. But over the last century, public access and residential and commercial development, marine boating, and economic dependency have created significant environmental impacts on the bay. It was the Biscayne Bay Management Plan in 1981 that first identified the framework for public access and marine environmental protection and established the Shoreline Review Committee to guide access and development. Since then, the adoption of the Manatee Protection Plan has had a profound effect on where and at what speeds motorized vessels might operate. Chapter 24 of the County Code summarized these policy and regulatory guidelines. Today, the recently convened Biscayne Bay Task Force is reviewing marine environmental impacts, including water quality, the loss of benthic habitat or seagrass decline in North Biscayne Bay, and manatee and mangrove protection measures. And a draft we expect will be available sometime next month. And of course, sea level rise continues to heighten Miami-Dade's awareness of the two-pronged threat to Biscayne Bay's shoreline from inundation and storm surge. In 2018, Miami-Dade Parks funded a sea level rise flood mitigation study by Cummins Cedarburg to develop and determine appropriate flood mitigation measures for Matheson Hammock Park. The study developed concepts for major infrastructure components and provided cost estimates, and those cost estimates are staggering. Based on the preliminary estimates, the proposals phased improvements between now and 2040 will cost the Parks Department $55 million. And considering that Matheson Hammock is only one of several dozen public parks, marinas, and open spaces along the bay, the cost estimates for reducing sea level rise impacts are daunting. And the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is working on the county's resiliency office, working with the county resiliency office to identify appropriate protective measures that can reduce coastal flooding and protect from storm surge in those areas. And to achieve this, the Corps has launched the 3-year, $3 million coastal storm risk management feasibility study, also known as the Back Bay study, to explore measures such as upgrading the salinity control structures along major canals to serve as storm surge barriers, the acquisition of land in floodplains, or the restoration of mangroves and reefs, and a whole host of other activities. One of the most recognizable and challenges involves simply launching your boat here in Miami-Dade County. Many of the privately owned marinas and boat yards and boat ramps have ceased operation over the years and have been simply displaced by private land use for housing and commercial development. This reduction in the supply of available waterfront access exacerbates a particularly acute problem in Miami-Dade, where the finite number of and amount of developable waterfront space has already limited the opportunities for existing or new public access to the water. Unfortunately, this reduction in supply has come at a time of increasing demand by growing resident and tourist populations and an ever-increasing number of registered recreational boaters, leading to a growing conflict that is borne by the county and municipal boat launching facilities. And if you've ever launched your boat at a county or municipal ramp, you know that if you're not on the water by 10 o'clock in the morning between April and Columbus Day, chances are pretty slim that you're going to make it out at all. So the challenge for the policymakers is wading through this complicated history and preserving Miami-Dade's way of life along the water by balancing recreational waterfront access, a robust marine-related economy, and marine environmental protection that includes green infrastructure to mitigate the effects of rising sea levels. To guide these decisions, the Florida Inland Navigation District has partnered with the Miami-Dade Parks Department, who is serving as the lead agency, to fund a multidisciplinary team led by Pros Consulting to develop what is called the Waterfront Recreation Access Plan, or the WRAP. The primary goal of the WRAP is to develop strategies that unify and harmonize in a single document a framework for the increase in equitable public access to the county's waterfront and waterways, the protection of the marine environment, sustaining economics through working waterfront businesses, climate change adaptation, and providing for an increase in recreational and ecotourism opportunities. So think public parks, river and bay walks and fishing piers and gorgeous views of the water, promenades with restaurants and entertainment, causeways and recreational island access and amenities, fishing and snorkeling locations, water taxis and ferry boats connected as part of the county's public transportation system, improved public marinas, and better boat launching facilities. With 30,000 new residents moving to Miami-Dade County annually and more than 16 million annual visitors and a burgeoning marine-related economy, the development of such a plan, which sets out a shared vision and common goals and strategies, is consistent with similar initiatives in world-class communities both in the US and around the world, including Sydney, Australia, Seattle, Vancouver, Toronto, London, and our neighbors in Palm Beach, St. Lucie, and Martin counties. To get underway, Miami-Dade Parks assembled a steering committee to guide the planning process, and whose members include representatives from FIND, from key municipalities, from transportation, the marine industry, which is where Jason comes in, and Don, also from the environmental management community, resiliency, tourism, law enforcement, and economic development. And as part of the scope the defined scope of work, we will be providing an inventory of boat ramp and docking facilities, shoreline and commercial and working waterfront opportunities, waterborne transportation recommendations, environmental conditions that affect waterfront access, and the mapping of an aspirational blueways plan for boaters and non-boaters alike. There's 6 strategic focus areas that the RAP will be built around. The first is improving public access to our waterways for boating, canoeing, kayaking, shoreline fishing, walking, wading, and swimming. Increasing and enhancing nature-based recreational and ecotourism opportunities. Protecting our natural resources and incorporating climate change adaptation and resiliency measures along our shorelines. Promoting sustainable economics and funding strategies for access improvements. Creating an interconnected system of publicly accessible waterfront destinations that includes expanded water-based transportation, and mapping the Park and Open Space Master Plan's Blueways water trail systems and shoreline access plan. The process. Well, it includes extensive research and stakeholder interviews and highly interactive public engagement. We're at a phase right now where we're nearly finished with our research phase, and we've amassed an incredible library of data dating back through the 70s through up till today. And we're just wanting to make sure that we do not skip any essential work that's already been done that is relevant to the future of the Bay. We have an extensive list of current and aspirational waterfront projects that the 22 municipalities have provided. And we have an extensive GIS capacity that will be used to create a base map that guides the recommendations of the plan. We have drafts in the works for the needs assessment survey that will focus on the general public. This survey will be linked to the PROS consulting database via the county's steering committee members and pertinent stakeholders' websites. And we hope the Marine Council will host one of these links for us. And we have 3 public engagement workshops, North, Central, and South, that will be available in socially distanced auditoriums. And of course, this will depend on the health department's guidelines on how we move forward. There's probably the most important piece is the 6 focus groups that we will be doing. They'll probably most likely be done by Zoom at this stage in the game because we don't want to wait too much longer to get them underway. Those 6 groups include marina managers and dock masters from around the county, a marine manufacturers, boating, and allied marine industries group that will include commercial and tour operators. We have the developers, financial institutions, design professionals, and tourism focus group. We have an environmental NGO and national pool that'll be made up of National Park Service, state, and county officials, and those NGOs that represent environmental interests. We have a public safety group that'll be hosted by the FWC, and we have non-motorized canoe, kayak, paddleboard operators, and related NGOs, and I think that'll be hosted by the Echo Adventures crew at Miami-Dade Parks. The project schedule, well, the resulting recommendations will serve as the basis for a comprehensive framework intended to guide the future decisions that and will shape access, preservation, and development of the waterfront resources. The plan is scheduled to be completed in December, but considering the COVID-19 challenges, it's likely that there will be a slight delay in that. But we want to make sure that we're going to do good work and make sure that we take our time and do the right thing so we get it right the first time. So with that, there's 2 things that I would leave before we open up for some questions and comments, is that the Marine Council would consider co-hosting the Marine Manufacturers, Boating, and Allied Marine Industries Focus Group, and second, would provide a link on the Marine Council website for the RAP survey and encourage members and public participation to take that survey so we maximize its impact. So with that, thank you very much for the opportunity to give you this presentation today, and I welcome your thoughts and recommendations.
Can I ask a question and make an observation?
Sure. Go ahead, Ben.
So I'm a resident of Miami Beach, and Spencer Crowley probably knows what I'm about to introduce. How are you working with the municipalities in terms of getting the word out to not only the departments, but some of the boards and committees in the various municipalities? For instance, I sit on the Marine Waterfront Protection Authority Board for the City of Miami Beach. And to the best of my knowledge, having attended those meetings for the last 2 years, that board is not aware of your work and would benefit certainly by either hearing a presentation or participating through a comment period once they knew what it was you were doing. And the second part of that is, speaking of Miami Beach, last year, it was only as a result of Spencer Crowley's intervention that a resolution was stopped from passage that was going to eliminate all public access on public street ends in residential neighborhoods, which is completely contrary to your goals and efforts of joining the municipalities together and increasing access to the waterways for all the reasons you stated. So throw in some of the water quality issues we have with Biscayne Bay, particularly in Miami Beach. It's very challenging, I think, for you to really incorporate, at least with the City of Miami Beach, and get your message to them so that they fully embrace what it is you're doing.
Well, Ben, and just so you know, the City of Miami Beach is represented on the steering committee, as is the City of Miami and certain key municipalities, and certainly Miami Beach, their work and you know the amount of accessible areas that they have already along the shoreline. So I would be more than happy to make a presentation. I have been, at this point, we as a group have been taking our lead from the municipalities, those members of the steering committee. The city has provided us with a series of projects that they are working on currently, and those that certainly provide more public access. So, you know, we've been taking our lead from them on it, being careful not to overstep and meet, you know, one of the things we don't want to do as a consulting team is we just don't have the bandwidth to be able to meet with every single group that might be potentially affected along the community. We hope the public engagement and survey process, and just like what we're doing today, now with you bringing that to our attention, we'll be able to prioritize and see where we should be focusing some attention and making inroads to try to get some more information on it. So Spencer, I don't know what your thoughts are on, you know, on that piece of it.
Yeah, just to add, and I think, Ben, this is like the first public meeting that the initiative is really holding. And so that's sort of the purpose of this, is to let people know what's going on and get them thinking about where else this might be appropriate to you know, to talk about. And certainly, I think you going back to your board and requesting this as an agenda item is something that is entirely appropriate, and I'm sure, as Jack mentioned, he'd be happy to do a presentation before the board. The other thing to mention is, you know, Miami Beach has its own Blueways plan that was funded by Find and adopted a couple years back, and so I guess, you know, part of our thinking is that plan itself is sort of like a plug and play for Miami Beach, because they have done a lot of work. Now, you know, whether or not they're adhering to it or living up to the intent is kind of a different story, but you know, they have a fairly well-developed Blueway plan for Miami Beach. But anyway, so those are just my thoughts, but I think, Ben, you know, go back to your board, ask them if they'll put this on the agenda, and, you know, Jack and I can try to attend also myself. We'd be happy to.
And Julie, maybe we can put a blast out to our members, because I'm sure a number of our members sit on a number of these boards, you know, that if they're aware of them, make them aware of the plan, make them aware that, you know, if they have a group that they sit on, that they should bring this to their attention.
Absolutely. Any other questions?
Ben, I thought for sure you were going to comment on the list of committees, or not committees, but public points, and ask where the contractors were.
Well, I didn't want to be unprofessional, so.
Commercial and industrial is part of the requirement, and we do have a consultant, a sub-consultant that is working on that has been actually under contract with the Florida Inland Navigation District, doing some things statewide. So we're going to take their work focused in this area, and it will be a part of the commercial side of what we do.
The other thing that you know, going back to your thing about Miami Beach and the street ends, the original, going back to the original Biscayne Bay Management Plan back in the 80s, street ends were always identified as one of the key areas where the public could get access to the bay. And the fact that I didn't realize the municipality was trying to do that. I mean, you know, we do work with City of Miami Beach, and you know, I can always put my 2 cents in with whoever I talk with over there, but street ends are important, I think, in terms of making this whole thing work.
Well, if I, not to elaborate too much, but it was a backroom deal, and I was alerted to it, and Spencer stepped in, put on his superhero costume, and stopped it from happening. But it came within hours, or days rather, where this thing was going to be a done deal, and residential neighborhoods were not going to have access to the bay through public street ends. Which also brings us to the point of the newly elevated seawalls on public street ends. There's very little being done on Miami Beach anyway to incorporate designs that still guarantee access to the bay and provide resiliency. Jason Cummings was kind enough 2 years ago to provide a pro bono design that would accomplish both. And I think more and more of that needs to be looked into as municipalities raise seawalls and prevent access to the bay.
You bring up a good comment, Ben, and you know, the City of Miami has some draft language out to their seawall ordinance, if you want to call it that. It's highly going to affect potentially these access points. So that's something certainly to look into, or at least touch on in the plan, is maybe how we can facilitate access when you have something that's 7-8 feet above the water for those street ends.
Well, Jason, you have a perfectly working plan that worked on our little street end that was not incorporated by the City of Miami Beach. But if you want to resurrect that design and share it, I think it had great merit.
And now we're submitting, just so you know, our firm is submitting comments to the Miami stuff with these specific topics: maintaining access, having hybrid approaches as opposed to just one definitive wall or line. But I think it's hitting it from multiple points, being this plan is certainly helpful for everyone that's using the waterfront.
Hey, Jason, can you share the proposed language from the City of Miami Beach with Jack, so that
It's for City of Miami.
or City of Miami language with Jack, so that, I mean, and the idea, this concept of having sort of a prototype or a street end design, Jack, that might be, that would be something great to incorporate into our document, I think.
Very much so, and I'm very aware of the issues that happened in Miami Beach with the street ends, and so also I think Jason, as a member of the steering committee, getting some of that information to us so we can look at it. I think our ability to have the plan reflect certain design standards. I know there's some tremendous work that the Resiliency Office has done in looking at all of the green and gray options that exist along shorelines. So I think that standards piece is going to be a very important part of what we do. So we'd love to see what's actually under works, what's practical and what's aspirational, and and provide some of that in the report.
This is Spencer. Just I gotta drop off here real quick, but I just want to mention one thing before I go, and that is, you know, we all realize that there's a lot of complex issues, and there's going to be difficulty in terms of implementing all of the different things we're talking about. I think we realize more than anyone those complications, because these are things we deal with in our daily lives and in our work. Nevertheless, I think the way we at the Marine Council should be thinking about this is it's a way to basically put on paper and on the internet, you know, an aspirational vision for how this community can use and enjoy and relate to the waterways. And in doing so, what we're trying to do is take a vision that many of you here in the Marine Council have, because you're familiar with these issues, and convey that to policymakers and elected officials who are not familiar with those issues, and who you know, really, I think in many cases don't see the vision. You know, I think the first step to realizing these goals is sort of convincing those elected officials and policymakers that, you know, there's a way to connect this county in a way that it's never been connected to before, in a way that's going to make it much better than it ever has been. And that's, you know, relates to a lot of these waterfront issues. And so, you know, I would just sort of make sure everyone understands, like, we're not expecting to, nor thinking that we're going to solve all of these problems and just like get everything done by this document. It's really a vision of the bay and the waterways that we hope to be able to impart to those who can make these decisions. Because, you know, if we at the Marine Council could make all these decisions, the county would look a lot different than it does right now, and would be a lot better probably. But, you know, that's not our job, and we're not elected, and we don't run for office. But it is our job to be advocates for that vision. And so, you know, I really think it's important that the Marine Council try to stay involved with this, and Jason's going to do a great job in representing the Marine Council. So if you have specific comments, make sure you get with Jason, or you know, feel free to participate directly through contacting me or Jack. We'd be happy to hear from you. And, you know, the voice of this Marine Council is very, very important in this initiative. So we really hope this is the beginning of the conversation, and not just a one-time presentation. So,
and I would also add that although we're most likely through the Marine Council going to be hosting some kind of marine related focus group, or we're putting this information out on our website, the various groups that we're going to be having these input sessions with probably span the professions of a lot of members in the marine organization. So participate in more than one. You know, make sure that marine voice gets heard across the entire spectrum of input.
great
Jack,
point.
following up on what Spencer and Ed said, what do you need from what do you need from us? What would you like us to do?
Well, you're starting it. Ben started it. I think the best thing that we could do is maybe offline work to summarize the most important issues that the Marine Council has. If that can be sort of collected by either Julie or somebody, you can kind of get that so we can start to filter that. Then I can work with you, Michael, and Julie, and whoever are appropriate subcommittee perhaps of the Marine Council to develop the focus group and its questions perhaps that will, guide the discussion, and then we can move in that direction. But I think that it's first getting all of those potential issues together that that you see most important to the marine community and most important to this plan. Make sure that this plan reflects it, such as design standards for seawalls, such as street ends for how that access will exist and that sort of thing. And any of the other issues you have.
We'll do it. Any other comments, questions?
Just a quick comment. If Julie could send out an email with email contacts for Jack and other key players for comments for the plan, just so that we can stay in touch with them and copy the Marine Council in our correspondence.
Absolutely. And I can also send out, if you guys can also email me any of these questions that you might have, any of these issues that you feel, you guys should all have my email address, julie@teamauticom.com, but I'll send out a blast email with some of these key information, a brief description, and then maybe a survey of some sort to get some information back from all of you.
Yeah, I think that would
David from Mallory, are you wearing a Boilermaker t-shirt? You're muted.
still muted.
Yes, I'm wearing a Purdue t-shirt, but it's only because my wife's from Indiana.
Go Boilermakers.
Yeah.
Boiler up.
Folks, just, consider this and think of it. I think Spencer did a good job of talking about it. And that's why I brought up the Park and Open Space Master Plan at the beginning, because it's a visionary document, a framework of next and best practices for the Bay, designed to inspire action towards making these connections and making the Bay more accessible while protecting it and making sure that we stimulate the economy. So, there was a little kind of a miscue at the beginning that Spencer and I kind of cleared up the other day, that we were going to be prioritizing a set of projects and things like that as they came through. We, in fact, are going to be simply setting what those best practices and recommendations might be, and probably a framework for providing the communities a framework for evaluating their projects in light of what the next and best practices are, rather than trying to get into the hornet's nest of trying to say whose kung fu is better than whose kung fu. It's one of those kind of things and that's where we need your expertise, and we need to get that all consolidated into something that is durable and that will have shelf life that we can apply to for many years to come.
Thank you.
Okay, Jack, first and foremost, want to thank you for coming and putting all of this together for us. I really appreciate it. I was going to say coming here, but you know what I mean. And everybody, I think this worked out rather well. Our next meeting is set for a month from now, May 27th. Probably, depending on current events, may well be via Zoom, but if not, we'll let you know one way or another. On the other hand, as Jack said, if you have any issues, thoughts, Julie's going to send out a blast email. If you'd send them to her, I got some ideas and it's just sitting here, and we can take care of that. If we have any other events, we'll let you know in the not too distant future. Julie has hosted video happy hours. I thought that was actually pretty cool, through other organizations.
I'd have to do one for Marine Council too.
I think we need to do one and such. But if there are no more comments, announcements, remarks for the good of the organization, I want to thank you all for being here today, and we'll see you later.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Y'all stay safe out there, and we'll see you around.